Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of our series on eating from our empowered selves on Food and Mood Talks. We're here with registered dietitian Gabrielle. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here again, Sarah. These conversations are so powerful, and I feel like they honestly get better and better. We have so many more topics that we're excited to share with you. And the goal of all these conversations is to help you become empowered while taking a holistic approach that considers the science-backed, nutrition, personalized side of things, then also the psycho-spiritual side of things. So that's why Sarah and I are coming together to have these conversations that aren't being there, that aren't happening across our whole world. So we're excited to bring these conversations to the dinner table, so we can work through it all together. And today's goal specifically is to talk about why we procrastinate on things we want to do, not procrastinate on things we don't want to do, because I think that's a little bit more of an obvious answer, but why we procrastinate on things we want to do, how to identify what's causing this response that we're having, and how to prevent ourselves from getting really stuck in the cycle. Because I noticed time and time again that this is a cycle that a lot of people I work with get stuck in. They come to me and they say, I get so excited to do all my habits and goals and everything we're working on. But then when it comes time to me doing it throughout the week or in between us meeting, I don't do it and I avoid it and I procrastinate on doing it, but I don't know why, because I really want to feel really great. I really want to get healthier. I really want to build these healthy habits and routines into my life so that I can reach my goals and feel empowered, but I avoid it. And for a while, I was seeing this pattern of clients saying this to me. And, to be honest, I've seen it in myself as well, but I've never really been able to get to the bottom of what exactly is going on. There's some tools and tactics I like to utilize when I'm struggling myself or when people I work with are struggling on this procrastination and avoidance. But Sarah, I really want to hear from you and your perspective on this, of what you think is going on when clients have a goal, have a habit, have something they really want to work on, but they're avoiding it like the plague.
Absolutely. And I would say here there's two things, right? Like, first of all, we tend to think of procrastination as maybe like a flaw, right? Like, I'm a procrastinator, but many times like there could be a very valid reason of why we're procrastinating. And we like the most important thing is looking at the habit of procrastination, kind of like seeing like eagle's eye, right? Because when we judge ourselves for procrastinating, that is another procrastination. So if we really want to take in and get on our own side and see like what's really going on, the most important thing is kind of reframe how we see procrastination and realizing that it's not a flaw, but it could be either our nervous system telling us something, it could be our bodies telling us something, maybe it could be threatening to be healthy, right? If we tend to get comfort or attention, or we feel safe by not feeling okay, then procrastination is actually feeding into our goal of feeling safe and feeling okay. So it's about realizing, for each person it's going to be different. Where do I procrastinate? Like, what is going on when I'm procrastinating? Like, what are the situations? What are the triggers? By understanding these things more, we're able to understand, and we can kind of piece it together without criticizing. Because again, if criticizing is another way of procrastinating, we're never getting to the core of the issue. And this is why I feel like our work is also really important in connecting, with our clients, because they oftentimes are criticizing themselves so much that it just becomes, procrastination is just like with layers and layers of shame and of self-hate and violence towards ourselves. So it's really important to first of all reframe and realize, if we're procrastinating, it's because that procrastination is feeding onto a goal that we might not be aware of. Like, it's our blind spot. It's a pattern from our childhood that has been there. It's a habit. So first of all, I'd say the most important thing is taking a bird's eye view of the territory and what's going on.
That's interesting. And I guess would be better understanding what triggers you in the moment, right, to procrastinate, and better understanding what your personal triggers are, because they're probably a lot different than your friend or your neighbor's triggers. So it's understanding what your triggers are first, and then understanding what ways do we procrastinate, because I mean, there's obvious procrastination, like, okay, scrolling on social media, but can you give some other ideas of like how people can procrastinate, or what people's outlets can look like?
Yes, absolutely. I have a full bunch of them in my pocket because I've used so many of them. I was like the master procrastinator. Um, but and I still am on my blind spots, right? And this is why the most important thing is to realize what the blind spots are. But for example, being so perfectionist around our food, counting calories, obsessing about what we're going to be eating and how we're going to plan it throughout the day, these are major ways of procrastinating. So what that's how it relates to our food, or it could be planning on like our workout schedule. So for me, one of the major things that I see with my clients is like the need to plan, or the need to have everything perfect, because it's like planning is a safer way, and it's making ourselves feel like we're doing something about it in a very valid way. Like it makes sense, we're trying to do something. But if we're not materializing, that's because we're really scared. It could be scared of failure, it could be the risk of putting ourselves out there. So when it comes to food and body, I would say mostly it's around planning, or it's about like destructive relationship with food. It could be like avoiding eating, restricting, or it could be binging and purging. There are many ways that we procrastinate, because these are self-regulating mechanisms, right? To avoid like the part of really putting ourselves out there, which can actually be very detrimental to our system. So it's a delicate process, but I'd say a lot of perfectionism around food, that's one. And over exercising, planning around exercising. Yeah, these are what come to me right now. Also, self-criticizing, that's another way of procrastinating.
Okay, so it's that like extremist side of perfectionism, hyper planning every meal, everything you put in your mouth, everything you're macro counting, tracking, over exercising. And just a side note of that too, this is also why when I do any sort of planning with clients, I call it flexible planning. So you want to look at your schedule, you want to look at your work schedule, you want to see where can I get into movement throughout the week? What can my breakfast, lunch, dinners look like this week so I can go grocery shopping? But I always say you got to take it day by day. You have to listen to your body. If you plan, okay, I have an opening at lunchtime, so I'm going to go to that spin class, but that day you feel low energy, you feel fatigue, you feel sore, you don't feel like going to the spin class, don't go to the spin class then. You got to listen. Your body's trying to tell you something. Listen to your body. And that's you avoiding that spin class isn't you procrastinating. It's you actually listening to your body, and maybe it needs rest that day. So at lunch, go sit in the sun and don't move a limb. And maybe that's exactly what your body needs. Or like, yeah, I planned some fun, healthy dinners for the week, but Thursday comes around, you had a really long, crappy day. It's raining, it's cold outside. You don't want what you planned because it's not a warm, comforting meal, what your body's craving. So don't eat that planned dinner that you have if you don't want that, because if you force yourself to eat that, then you're going to make up for it later. You're going to binge later. You're going to binge this weekend because you shut your mind, body, thoughts, behaviors off on that Thursday night because it was your Monday through Friday perfection type of days and meals and whatever. So that is a huge, and I love that, Sarah, is sometimes sometimes people look at what health and being fit is having this crazy workout routine, having this perfect meal plan. No, that's not what health is, at least in my eyes. Health is listening to your body. Health is giving your body what it needs, and that's going to change day to day. So that is such an important form of procrastination. And then there's also the forms of procrastination where you feel more comfortable reverting just into these. You come to me with saying, I need to break the habit of, and let me give a really specific example. So say someone says, I want to start taking the dog out in the morning, getting some fresh air at the start of my day before I dive into the work day. But every time I say I want to do that, 2 weeks goes by and I press snooze every single day. I stayed in bed, scrolled on my phone, and then got work started and didn't set my goal and didn't do my goal of getting outside in the morning.
Mhm.
What do you see that procrastination stemming from or causing?
I see in what you're telling me also there could be a lot of dullness in the way that we set our goals, right? It's like we want to do this, but if we're not doing it, it could be because we're really stuck in that like dullness of repeating patterns over and over again. What I'd say in this case is like also a really good way to do it is being inspired by something that we want to do. Like for example, you talked about the sun. For me, the sun, I'm like a plant. Like I love being outside in the sunshine. And it's like reframing like things that I need to do to things that make me feel really, really good. And the thing is that when we're so stuck in the self-criticism, it becomes also like a counter, like it's contradicting because it's like we are not looking to do the things that give us pleasure because we kind of want to get things done. So I think here a huge element is the pleasure principle, right? It's like how do we feel towards pleasure? So in this sense, it's like really maybe checking in with our client, like how do they feel with this walking their dog? Like what narrative is going on there? What is preventing them? And how do they feel towards these parts that are preventing them from doing that, right? Because then it stacks like, and it just becomes like, just a very triggering response. So one thing that could be super helpful is first regulating our nervous system so we can check in to see what we really want to do. Like you said, maybe you had a really long day at work and you don't want to eat this for dinner. And the thing is, if we're really like dysregulated, then it's going to be all of our parts like trying to control, like, why are you not doing this? So a huge part for firstly is to get in touch with ourselves, seeing like what can give me pleasure. And if we're not doing things that give us pleasure, it's really realizing what is our relationship with pleasure. I think that's a huge one in setting goals, because many times we set goals to avoid pleasure for many narratives that we have around that.
Okay, so I love that it's almost resetting, reframing what your goals and habits are and intentions that you're working on that week or that month. It's reframing them completely from what you feel like you have to do, and why you're doing it. So say that person, that example client was saying this as like, I'm going to get up in the morning and walk my dog outside because I want to lose weight. And that's
Mm,
dull, like not meaningful goal is in the back of their head. And that's what's preventing them to scroll on their phone in the morning, not get out of bed, because they're like, well, what if I get up every morning and I walk my dog and I don't lose weight? What happens? Then you have that fear of failing, because your intention and your goal is focused on something so unattached to your true self. While I think if you did exactly what you just said and reframe and reset that goal where I'm going to get up in the morning and get outside and walk the dog because I feel emotionally, mentally, spiritually better when the sun is on my face, when I breathe in some fresh air. And that's how I want to start my day. So it translates into the rest of my day. So I feel really good and I boost those happy hormones and I decrease that stress hormone. So it's really better understanding what your goals are and why they are what they are, and setting really more meaningful, intentional goals. And that will help prevent you from procrastinating from them.
absolutely. That's exactly it, right? And also maybe, I think that people that I don't have a dog, but people that have dogs, like it's like their best friend, right? So many times it could be like, I'm doing this for my dog. I'm taking my dog out on a walk so they can get fresh air and they can feel better. And I'm just kind of being of service to the dog, right? Like maybe putting ourselves out of the situation of needing to lose weight, because that can be so draining. It can make us wake up with this huge fear, right? And then we think that, why don't I want to walk the dog? It's not about that. It's about, like you're saying, if the goal is to lose weight, then it just becomes like a very soul sucking way to wake up. But if it's like, oh, I want my dog to take me out for a walk, or my dog needs to go and do its thing in the park, so that can be very different. And also one thing that can really be helpful is stacking things, like instead of the negative spiral of I need to start my day by walking to lose weight to be healthier, it could just be like, actually being in the sun makes me feel really good. Like that makes me feel really good. That's not a goal, it's just a way to wake up, and then that makes me feel really good, and then noticing the other things that make us feel really good, and then kind of just like putting them onto each other. Maybe I want to go get a coffee, in the morning outside, and after getting my coffee, which makes me feel really good, I'm going to take my dog for a stroll, right? So it's kind of like reframing the things instead of doing the have tos. It's like, this actually makes me feel good. But this is why it's really important to see our relationship with pleasure. And also, like, if it's showing up a lot, the pattern of not wanting to do that, it's like, what is being stacked on there, right? Like in those moments.
Mhm. So yeah, I think that is so important, is just better understanding what brings you joy, and setting your goals and intentions off of what brings you joy will help you prevent you from procrastinating. But like we said, I think there's still going to be times where you find yourself procrastinating even with things that bring you joy, and that's when you have to dig a little bit deeper and see, maybe is this avoidance or this procrastination a stress response, to protect yourself from becoming uncomfortable. So you just keep repeating these unhealthy or habits that aren't serving your mental or physical health. And that's where it gets important to really understand that when we're under chronic stress, so we are living, we're working a job that brings us chronic stress, or we have lots of unresolved stress and trauma in our relationships, in our family, in our friendships, and we're constantly living in this state of stress. It's going to cause our autonomic nervous system to really get stuck in a cycle that is protecting us. It's a stress response. So it's when our vagus nerve, which I talk a lot about in my work with clients, is the vagus nerve between your mind and your body. It gets stuck in this activated cycle for years and sometimes even decades of our lives. I have clients who come to me in their 60s and 70s and be like, I feel like I'm just snapping out of it. It can get us stuck in these mindsets and these habits and routines, survival mode. And sometimes that survival mode translates to avoidance and procrastination. And sometimes that procrastination can look like dissociating. So distracting yourself constantly. And sometimes distracting yourself can be with healthy habits. Like sometimes we think that hyper planning every meal and exercise routine, like we talked about, it's healthy, but really that's just a form of dissociating from what your mind and body is trying to tell you. Maybe it's people pleasing, maybe it's hypoarousal, maybe it's something like, isolating yourself and avoiding whatever is happening. And I think what's most important there is sometimes that can look like an unhealthy habit. Sometimes that can look like over obsessing over your food, nutrition, and exercise habits. And to really become unstuck from the survival mode, like Sarah was mentioning, is looking inward. And one of the best ways to look inward is to work on that vagus nerve between the mind and body. And whenever people work with me, we do mind body work where we are working to heal through good sleep, through breath work, through play, through joy. So setting your intentions and your goals for the week off of what brings you joy, what makes you feel like you're having fun, that you consider play, and through gut, because gut health is an important part of the whole mind body connection. And so it's that, and then it's not overwhelming yourself from breaking these habits, right? Because I think that we sometimes procrastinate because we just so overdo it. There's a lot of things that we all want to work on, right? And if you try to do it all at once, you're going to avoid it. You're going to procrastinate because it's too much to add to your plate. So it's having patience, having grace for yourself, building that self-awareness, better understanding your triggers, better understanding your outlets, and then better understanding yourself. So you know how to set these goals and intentions that you're going to look forward to doing instead of choosing to avoid or procrastinate it.
Absolutely. And like that's really important, like really regulating our nervous system, because like I remember when I used to I think my whole life I was looking at my previous journals and I would just content about food and about, okay, how can I change my diet now? How can I eat healthier? What can I do to get more in my body? But that was like so much of like my manager is trying to get me on board with like the goal of losing weight. But that was like all of my journal narrative. And I realized like in that moment, I thought I was getting to know myself, but I wasn't. Like that was just another way for me to really avoid like, what is my actual calling here? Like it's definitely not being obsessed about my weight and about my food. Like that isn't it. But felt so much like it, right? So one thing that, like you said, about connecting to joy, like that's really important because that is our compass, and connecting to our center, and that translates into regulating our nervous system. But the thing is, when joy feels threatening to us, that's when that is like the sneaky part of it, right? Because it's like, yeah, I'm doing this to get more in my body, but when it feels unsafe to be in our body, that's not true. We don't want to be in our body. So we are very mental, and we're organizing and we're planning. So it's really about seeing, like, just noticing what are these patterns showing up and not needing to analyze them in the moment. But like, for example, your clients, they come and bring that to you, it's like really seeing what is going on here without needing to figure things out, because also needing to figure things out, that's just another way of not feeling, because feeling can be very difficult, right?
Too much discipline is a form of numbing ourselves. When
Mm.
and like you were saying, within your journal, you were journaling on, okay, what can I change about my diet this week? How can I lose weight? How can I be really strict about X, Y, and Z? That to some people feels like, okay, discipline, this is good, I'm working hard. But really, over disciplining yourself is just a form of numbing yourself, which is what we call trauma body, or a form of stress response, which is a form of procrastination and avoidance. And I think there's a fine line, and I want to hear your perspective, Sarah, on this. Is like, setting intention, setting goals that bring you joy, right? And so that's going to help avoid avoidance and procrastination. But then there's that fine line of like, okay, but in some ways we want to chase the discomfort. We want to do things that step us out of our comfort zone, because sometimes these bad habits or unhealthy habits we have are, that part X in our brain sucking us back into that comfort zone. So, sometimes getting out, forcing yourself to get outside and get sun on your skin a few mornings in a row will maybe help you realize that, wow, this really does have a positive impact on my whole day. I just had to not press snooze that day and get outside. So where is the fine line between chasing the discomfort and being okay with taking risk, and being okay with the potential failure that's ahead, but also doing things that feel good and bring you joy?
Yes, that's really good. And what comes to me right now is letting go of the expectations. So making it a habit for us to change our patterns in every area of our life, not in every area, but like in areas that we're so like really in that pattern already. So for example, it doesn't have to be food and I was going to say food and mood related, but it doesn't have to be like food and body related. It can also be like the way that you read, right? Or the way that you shower. Like if we do things on like an ongoing basis the same way, just seeing like how would this change? Just like curious about the experiment, right? Because then it can show us that I don't need to be the person that I think that I have to be. But when there's an expectation there, then things change, right? Because it's like, oh, then I need to change my patterns with food because I have this goal. But if we can just play around with that and just see, like, I'm just bringing in freshness to my life, to my psyche, that's it. So doing things differently, not doing things better, doing things differently, and just really seeing how there is room to be different. And maybe that's something that we like. So I think it's really in the little steps.
I love that. So it's removing expectation and replacing it with play and curiosity of doing
Yes.
things just to see how it feels. And then basing it off of that. How does it make you feel mentally and physically? Not did it deliver the expectation that you had for it? So in that exact example of, don't force yourself to not press snooze and get outside on the walk because you are hoping it helps you lose weight. Don't press snooze and get outside so that you can see how it makes you feel, and you're curious about how it has an impact on your mood and your energy levels for the rest of the day and your mindset for the rest of the day. See how it makes you feel. And maybe it's not doing it for you, and that's okay. There's plenty of other things you can do that will make you feel better mentally and emotionally. Maybe it's not getting outside in the morning and walking the dog,
Exactly.
okay.
It could be having a donut for breakfast, maybe, right? Like maybe this is the uncomfort that we need, right? Someone who's been eating spinach and bananas for breakfast every day, it's like, go get a freaking donut, right? Like, see what that does for you and see that you're not going to die. So it's really just about a mentality of bringing freshness. One thing that I also really recommend my clients to do is when we're walking and, you know, we have like a strict agenda of, I'm going to walk there and I have a craving and I'm going to do this, whether there's a craving or not, just turn around, just like do a flip, right? And like that is so amazing because it really like sends a signal to our bodies of like, we can do something different, right? Just reverse. And those little things implemented into our life is what brings freshness, because like you said, there is no expectation of, because of this, then this, then this, then this. So it just realized that we can play with this, but by practicing on little things, then it will be easier when it's like other bigger things that might have expectations, because it's realizing like, oh, okay, I used to think that I was stuck, but then I just started doing like an immediate stretch. And that is what tells our bodies, I can move, right? It's just like, it's very symbolic. Like moving our bodies shows us that we are not stuck. And it tells our minds also there is room for thinking differently here.
Safe environment for fun and for curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I love that. So I think the when we can talk about this in so many different ways, Sarah and I were saying, but the biggest thing that we hope that you pull from this conversation is better understanding how to work on the habit of procrastination that you might feel like you get really stuck in day after day. And everything we mentioned is so important. And I think the most important thing is starting to reframe and reset your goals with a different mindset. And instead setting these goals and intentions you have for yourself out of curiosity, out of play, and out of joy. And then that's where the fine line of chasing the discomfort comes in, where but it's that mindset when you're going to do the goal or the intention of knowing that you're not doing this because you want to see if it brings you these outcome results, and instead you're doing it to have fun, for joy, and to see where it takes you, and being okay with whatever destination it brings you to. Because, and this is an exercise I do with clients where we call it failure is key for success. So we get so stuck in this negative mindset that every time we have a road bump come up, or every time something does not deliver us the expectations we wanted it to, or every time we don't do something we said we were going to do, this is key for our success, because all we have to do is reframe this idea of failing and look at it as a moment, an opportunity to learn and grow and move forward, and better understand how can we adjust this goal that you have for yourself in a way that is going to make you feel really good. And that's reframing, like we were just saying, and then not having expectations, being excited for a potential moment of failure, because it's just a moment to learn and grow, and moving forward. So to end it, Sarah, how would you summarize how we can begin working on breaking the habit of procrastination?
Yeah, I'd say it's really about getting to know ourselves and our patterns. And like, for example, having this thing that I want to do and then not doing it and then hating ourselves for not doing that. That's adding so much dullness and staleness into ourselves. Just realizing and having compassion for the top part of criticism towards ourselves, that with compassion and just like kind of teasing ourselves about it, that is procrastination. So hating ourselves for procrastinating, that is another way of procrastinating. So if we can bring that to our awareness, be like, okay, then maybe things aren't exactly the way that I think they are. And maybe there's a different way from here. So like, for example, in the Enneagram episode, I think you should all check out, because it really gives us information. It's like, I'm a very emotional type in the Enneagram, and realizing that I would get so stuck in my emotions, thinking that I was digesting my emotions, that was just another procrastination. And just realizing like, I don't need to be in this dark space all the time. Like, I'm thinking that I'm doing my work, but I'm not, because I'm not living life. And that was a procrastination. And that was a hard call for me, because I thought I was being really relevant, with my work. So noticing our patterns with the Enneagram, also realizing which parts are showing up, like which parts are trying to protect us, and just with that awareness, bringing in some freshness and realizing hey, like maybe this isn't the way, opening up to life, having humility for the moment and seeing like maybe there's a different way to do it, opening up to pleasure. So I think that these are ways of like, by noticing our constricting patterns, we can realize like, what does it really mean to feel good for me? So it's like an opening, a blooming of the flower with the intention of not achieving the goal, which is outside, but getting to the core of our flower, right? Like the heart of the artichoke. And that is where we can reframe and see like, my goal in this life isn't to get to that goal, because maybe that could be another procrastination, but it's to get to know myself and to feel good, which can be one of the hardest intentions. But I feel like this is really like where we start getting in touch with ourselves, in touch with life, having better relationships. It transforms everything.
So when you feel like you are just so stuck in this pattern of avoiding and procrastinating everything, we hope that you begin to do a little bit of inner work and getting to know yourself a little bit better. And that can be through like the Enneagram, the IFS systems and these are all episodes that we've recorded in the past and we just touch upon them. Of course, you need to dig deeper with Sarah and I in this work, but even if that's just doing a light read on how can you better get to know yourself, or spending a day with yourself and doing things that bring you joy and writing them down. Or what I like to do, and I tell clients to do sometimes, is take a big piece of paper, stick it on your wall. And when something makes you feel really good, whether it's food or a form of movement or a self-care activity or a conversation you had, write it on that piece of paper. What was it that just made you feel really good? And then you can keep this paper of all sorts of things, activities, hobbies, mindsets that bring you joy. And that makes you better understand yourself and how to create an entire life that supports your mental health and your emotional health and your spiritual health. That's going to lead to you being a more physically healthy human.
Yes, and I'd also like to end off with like, this is the series of eating from our empowered selves, and again, always coming back to empowerment of ourselves, right? Because when we get to choose something, we're owning up, we're taking responsibility for our actions. So if we're going to get that cookie that we said we weren't going to eat, where I don't think it's a good idea to say that we shouldn't eat cookies, but when we notice that dynamic, choosing to eat the cookie, if you're going to eat it anyway, choosing, because that is getting aligned with, okay, I'm choosing to do something, I'm choosing to escape, I'm choosing to procrastinating, but I'm choosing. And this is what gets us closer to ourselves. It's not about eating or not eating the cookie. It's about being aligned and being connected with how we're communicating with ourselves, with the world, our intentions, what we're doing, our behaviors. So always when we're doing something, instead of closing off and numbing ourselves and shutting down to life, choosing, I'm going to do this, and that's okay because I'm choosing it.
Because you are doing it connected and aligned with your true self. And when we say your empowered self, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about your empowered self is the you that is so, so incredibly connected with that true self that you feel, you look, you are empowered.
Yes, being conscious, being present, and yeah, I hope this was helpful. Also, I think the Food and Mood magazine could be really helpful because we need these reminders. And I always like keep on looking at the magazine because many times we forget. We get so stuck in a trauma response and a fight or flight response that it's just about, hey, that's not important. That's really not what we need right now, right? Looking somewhere else, regulation.
Yes, you need the reminders. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening and watching again. And we are so honored to have every single one of you listening in here. And we have more fun, amazing topics to come.
Yes, I love planning for the talks. I love being in the talks, and I love the posts. And please keep on sharing whatever comes up for you with us. And thank you so much for this. We will see you for the next episode of Eating from Our Empowered Selves.
Yeah.